My name is Howie Markson, and this presentation is about sharing your story in 3D. So before I get started, I want to kind of get an understanding of you a little bit. How many of you are familiar with 3D VIA? How many of you actually use 3D VIA? All right, so we have a pretty knowledgeable group. I'm not going to talk specifics about 3D VIA. Instead, I'm going to talk about how you're going to be able to use 3D VIA technology in order to share your ideas so that you can promote your concepts, your designs, your drawings, your innovation to other people within the organization. In order to do that, you've got to communicate effectively. So what you'll learn in this presentation is 4 ways in which you can improve your communication. So you can not only promote your work, but you can promote yourself within the organization. So we'll talk about ways in which you can be clear and precise in your communication so that other people understand exactly what you're telling them. We'll talk about ways in which you can improve your communication by engaging, having your audience be engaged and interactive with your story. How you might be able to actually immerse them in your story so that they not only understand what you're saying, but they can actually repeat what you've told them as well. And then finally, you'll learn about ways in which you can tell your story to your audience regardless of where they are. So we'll talk a little bit about cloud and mobility, because that's important that you reach out to your audience no matter where they are. So let me get started. So how do we share our stories today? I was an engineer for a number of years, and the way we typically would tell our story today is we would put a drawing together. We would anticipate what our audience needed in terms of technical information, product information, and we put a drawing together. I assume most of you today are doing the same thing, despite the fact that we live in a 3D world. Sometimes, of course, there's lots of information to convey. And so it wouldn't be just a single drawing. It would be a full stack of drawings that you use to share your ideas. You might work with your documentation group, technical illustrations, if you've got some kind of complex assembly where you want to more clearly, in a 2D way, explain what your product does or how manufacturing should assemble it. For those of you who can get really fancy, you might do a high quality rendering. So even before your design is done, even before it goes in production, you're already sharing what that end product is with manufacturing, with other stakeholders, with your customers, which is kind of nice because at this point they think it's all done when you know it really isn't. And there's lots more design work to be done. Sometimes you might even wait till the product or a prototype is created and take a picture of it. And then in the end, somehow you need to convey the innovation and the concept to your customers. You don't always think about that perhaps when you're designing, but in the end, it needs to meet a need, it needs to be sold, and therefore you put together a marketing brochure, which might have a nice fancy picture that you've put together with lots of text explaining exactly why this design is so innovative. The real question is, even though you're communicating or you think you're communicating, how do you know that your audience understands exactly what you're telling them? How do you know that they see it the same way you do? How do you know that they're not confused and not telling you that they're confused? So when we talk about communication, I'm wondering if those are really serving the full purpose. Obviously they're useful, but are they serving the right purpose? So I went ahead and looked up communication. What does it mean on Wikipedia? The source of all sources. All knowledge is on Wikipedia. And of course you're conveying your information through exchanging, but real communication requires that the receiver understands the message. So sometimes we think, I gave that information to them, I gave them the documentation, I can't believe they didn't assemble that correctly. But in fact, it's on you as the communicator to ensure that your audience actually understands what you're telling them. So when delivering your story, there's some things to think about, right? And I'm going to talk about some of these, and I'm going to show you ways, examples that our customers are using our technology to actually deliver their story so that people understand. So it's important that when you communicate, you're clear and precise so they understand exactly what you're telling them. Also, you want to enable your audience to engage and interact with your story. Okay, that way they're going to remember it, because you want, obviously, them to remember it. That's important. You can immerse them in the story, because it might be one thing to remember what you have told them. It's another thing for them to be able to repeat it. And you'll see some examples where it's really important that they understand what you're telling them and can repeat it if you're training them on a complex piece of machinery and then they need to go ahead and operate that and be safe. So it has to be repeatable. And then, as I mentioned before, when you deliver your story, you want to make sure it's delivered wherever your audience is, whether it's across the table, in another room, another building, in another country. So I'll show you some examples of the ways in which customers are using our technology in order to have effective communication. Now, to do all that, of course, you don't want to recreate the wheel. You want to leverage what you have. So you already have the 3D models. You already have a lot of the design done. And in order to be efficient in your communication, you want to be able to leverage that. So, of course, everything I'm talking about and everything you want to do is all around the data that you already have, and how can you leverage your data to be more effective in your communications. Make sense? So let me show you some ways in which you can be clear and precise. And I know we have some 3D Via Composer users in the room. And I'll talk about some customers. So Beckman Coulter. Beckman Coulter makes medical laboratory equipment and very complex devices. And they need to communicate to manufacturing how to assemble these devices. So they spend a lot of time putting together drawings of what this equipment looks like and also the procedure for assembling the equipment. And you can imagine, you've all done this, I'm sure yourself, how much time and effort goes into putting these drawings together. But in the end, when they handed this package over to manufacturing, it wasn't sufficient. And they were using those drawings, but they had a high error rate. So what manufacturing ended up doing, those lucky manufacturing process engineers, they would put their own work package together. They would wait till a prototype, see people nodding their heads exactly, they would wait till a prototype was done, then they would take pictures, digital photography, and they would put together each one of the steps, okay, in this big work package. It would take them about 3 months to put this package together. And then, of course, what happens when the design changes? Then somebody told me that they actually drew lots to decide who had to go back and redo all of the work instructions for the machine. So they were hating their job. So instead, what they did is they created an animation. So here they took the 3D CAD data that they already had, and they created a very clear animation on the movements required in order to assemble this piece of equipment. Now, the nice thing about this, too, is, one, it's kind of fun to do, so that gets some credit there. But also, when the equipment changed, then these work procedures automatically updated. And because this was so clear and precise, they could take those animations, those work instructions, and if they needed to, they could move the work to another manufacturing plant. The training and the ramp-up time for a new assembly worker was quite low. So here's a really good case of using the technology to be clear and precise about what your idea is and how people should, in this case, be doing assembly or assembling your equipment. So let me show you another example. This is more of an example where somebody wanted to promote their ideas, their design. So Brayton Energy makes energy applications. They combine renewable fuel with gas turbine technology. And this kind of innovative work is iterative. So they go through a lot of iterations of their design. But they want to be able to show the stakeholders and other people where they are with the design so that they can get feedback and, again, go through the iteration. So here what they did, rather than a 2D drawing, is they created an animation which clearly explains their technology to all of the stakeholders. They can get feedback, they can go through a new design, and then they can go ahead and automatically have an updated animation for people to actually see what their ideas are. So you can see this is much more effective than a drawing or doing a piece of technical documentation or handing over a manual or text to explain things. So this is around sharing your design, sharing your innovation. Okay, Rob, here's another example. And this example is tying back into marketing and sales. Again, this is done with composers. So Robert Juliet makes lighting equipment and really high-tech stuff, but they had very low-tech marketing. So what they did is, even before the design was done, they took the design models and they created some marketing, I won't call this a brochure, but some marketing content. So would-be buyers could understand what was coming, some of the innovation in the design, and they were actually able to take orders for this before the product was even built. So another example of taking the innovative design work that you do early on in the process and enabling your sales and marketing organization to be able to promote you and your ideas through animations. And as your design changes, the marketing materials update as well. Very powerful, very easy to do, and very effective. Okay, this last one is a bit contrived, but one of my colleagues is a sailor, so this is a services example. Suppose now, imagine you're out at sea, right, miles from shore, and you lose control of your rudder. So you do a little investigative work and you realize that the actuator is the problem, and you need to replace a couple of seals in the actuator. Now luckily, as we all do when we sail, we keep extra seals on board. So we actually have the parts we need to make the change, but we're not sure how to do it. So the idea is you can log on, download an animation, because you're a sailor, not a mechanic, and understand exactly how to fix the actuator. So here are some examples where you can use 3DV technology to be precise and clear in servicing, in design, in manufacturing work instructions, and also in sales and marketing. Very powerful tool. So I mentioned clear and precise. Let's talk about engaging and interactive. In this case, you not only want to tell your story, but you want to make sure people remember your story. So the best way to get them to remember it is to allow them to engage and interact with the story. Okay, they're going to be much more likely to remember it than if they're just sitting through a presentation and not being able to touch it. Okay, there's muscle memory involved. There's a whole science around this. But the reality is, if you can tell your story so that they're more engaged in it, then they're going to be able to remember it. So here's an example where this is a parts catalog. We're actually using 3DVIA technology along with some other technology from Dassault Systems called Exelead. And of course, it's much easier to understand the information in the context of 3D. So here you're able to go ahead, let's suppose you want to order a new part. You could be a customer, you could be a manufacturer, and you want to order a new part, but you want to understand who the vendor is, okay, and whether that part's in stock. So you can select the part that you want, that you're interested in, And all of that data isn't stored with the model. It's stored in a supplier database. So using XLE technology, it can go out, query, find out who the vendor is. In addition, you might want to find out which one of these parts are actually in stock. So you can do a mashup and identify all of the parts that are in stock or out of stock. So this is a much more interactive and engaging way for someone who needs to find a part, needs to replace a part in their equipment, rather than searching through a catalog and trying to figure that out and then go to another source to find out if it's in stock or who the vendor is. So that's one example of being being engaging and interactive. Here's another example. I'm actually, those of you with Composer users, I'm going to actually click through this example using Composer Player. And so this is the Honda Air car. It's a concept car put together by Honda that's fueled by air. And the original way in which they talked about this kind of neat technology is with a presentation. So they would have a slideshow, slide after slide, showing all this cool technology. So I was going to say we, but I actually didn't put it together myself. So we put this together to show how you can actually engage with this cool concept car and understand it more fully and remember it better. So let me just click through. So here I go, start the engine. I see the car now in some kind of scene, some environment in which it will run. Here it's showing me, okay, here's where the air gets filled into the car. Now I'm just selecting kind of randomly. You can put text as well. So here it's about telling your story, right? So you can combine interactivity with graphics and also with text, so you can really tell, detailed technical information about why this is such an innovative design. And evidently the concept was, the originator of this whole idea was this guy, Hank Leiter, who evidently liked to jump from high up places and fly with a fly suit. I don't know how many of you would be interested in doing that. But that was kind of part of the where they got the concept for this Honda Air car. So again, it's all about kind of telling your story in a way in which people will remember it. And I'll just make a few more selections here. So you can see this is using, those of you familiar with Composer, this is the digger tool. So you can go in there and kind of find your way a little deeper into the assembly. You might want to look at how the seats work. Or let's see how the innovation in the chassis. So being much more engaging and interactive, more fun. You're able to communicate your design ideas, your innovation to an audience much better than you would in a 2D graphics kind of environment. Okay. So this is an example. I'm going to just run this without me talking in a moment. A condo developer in downtown Toronto wanted to attract buyers for their condo, but of course the condo wasn't built yet. So what they did is they created a virtual condo so that a would-be buyer can actually go in and experience that condo before it's built. And you'll see they will walk through the condo. They will try different textures on the fireplace, put different paintings on the wall. They'll be able to see what that environment looks like during the day or at night. And they'll also be able to see the view. So this is a great way when you don't actually have the product, in this case the condo, to attract buyers to the point where he was actually able to get people to put down money on a very expensive condo before it was being built, before it was built. So I'm just going to run this so you can kind of see. Plus we get music as well. This is all using our technology. They're deciding where they go in the scene. Not a bad view. So how else are you going to be able to do that? Really give your would-be buyers an experience, or your audience. How can you tell your story like that in a brochure? And I know probably none of you are condo developers, so I appreciate that. But think about putting your equipment in a scene, right, where your equipment is actually going to be at the customer's site, and allow the customer to walk through that scene and use your equipment virtually so they can understand how that's going to fit in their environment. So really, really cool technology. So be immersive. So we know through being interactive and engaging, they can remember it, but you want them to recall it. You want them to be able to repeat it. So tell your story in a way in which it's immersive. Here's an example where the first example is somebody who wants to orient themselves to a facility. So in this case, it's a nuclear facility. And it's very dangerous, it's not safe, it's expensive to actually put somebody in that environment for them to understand what the facility is. So here, they're using two monitors. They can see where they are, both in a planar view and in a profile view, where their elevation is. They can see actual footage through video of where they are and what they would see in the actual environment. So it's a really good way to immerse someone in an environment where it's too costly or it's not safe for them to experience it physically in real life. And of course, now when this person gets into that facility, they're going to be much more prepared to do whatever they need to do because they know their way around. So how else do you do this? You give them a drawing with a plan view of the facility and ask them to kind of get a feel for it that way. So they're going to remember this and they're going to be able to recall this a lot better. Another example. Now, in this example, it's about orientation, but it's also about completing a task. So not only do you need to be oriented to the oil platform, but you need to perform a task. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you can imagine here's another environment which would be very difficult to put somebody out on that oil rig so that they can learn how to do this on their own. So in this case, they need to do an operational procedure. There is a problem. They need to go and close some valves. So it's basically around virtual training. They can orient themselves, so you can teach them how to do this procedure. They can then practice it themselves. They can go into this virtual environment and practice how to do it. And then you can also test them on the procedure. So you know by the time that they get onto that oil rig or wherever that environment is, they know exactly what they're doing, they know the process, they know the procedures, and they're safe and can actually do their tasks. Okay, let's bring it back to a little bit more our space, industrial equipment and manufacturing and all of that. So, okay, let me talk about this for a moment before I start. So here's a case where you've designed a piece of bottling equipment, right, for bottling, but you need to change the bottle type. You need to explain to somebody the procedure for changing over the tooling to support another bottling type. So it's really, because these machines run 24/7, they're in production, it's very costly to take them out of production to train somebody, right? The other option is you could buy an extra machine so that they could train on it, but again, very costly. They're not going to do that. So instead, you can train them in a virtual environment on how to operate the machine, how to do the turnover of the tools, so that you don't use up or have to use a regular piece of equipment. And then when they go and do that for real, they're going to be able to do it much more quickly and much more safely, so your production can get back up to speed again quickly. So let me share with you this. So in this case, somebody is actually going through, I think this is more like a learning environment. They're going to go ahead and do these different procedures, and then you'll get a check mark up in the top which says, okay, you've done that procedure correctly. You could, in this case, they happen to do I think they do all the procedures correctly, but you can imagine if they do a procedure incorrectly, then you could give them some other indication that what they did was wrong, and they can go ahead and relearn that task. And at the end, you also have all of the data around each of the persons going through training, so you know how well they performed that particular task. So here they're just walking in to the piece of equipment, and they'll identify the tool and do the replacement. So you can see the check mark. They pulled off the right tool. Now they're selecting the new one for the new bottle type, and they're putting that in, and they'll get another check mark saying you're doing this correct. So you can see this is much more interesting. Somebody's going to remember how to do this than they would if they were looking at drawings, how to make a change. Okay, I got one more immersive experience. I don't know how many of you have seen Z-Space. They're out in the exhibit hall. Really cool technology. This is a desktop, basically a desktop holographic piece of appliance where you put on these funny goggles, and using Composer content, you're able to explore the design. You're able to use a pen, pretty much pull out the parts you want to look at. You want to rotate it around. You want to put them back together. Very, very cool technology for things like design review. So I'm just going to show you a quick video of that they put together. And I would encourage you to go and check out that technology because it's really cool. And you can see where it'd be very useful in design. Has anybody seen that technology before? A few people? Not you, I know that already. So you probably don't get more immersive than that, right? There's other immersive technology that we have in 3D Via that's hard for me to show. We've got a cave environment where it's virtual reality. You actually walk in and you have, you can follow your arms and your motions to experience a room or to go through a procedure in this big cave. Also cool technology, but not very practical for me to set up here in the room. So I wasn't able to do that. So we talked about being clear and precise. We talked about being engaging and interactive, being immersive. The other thing you want to consider when you tell your story is, where is your audience? You want to be able to tell your story wherever your audience is. So there's a lot of people in this world. There's a lot of people in this world, and 77% of them use some kind of mobile device. So if you want to promote your ideas, if you want to promote your innovation, if you want to talk about your design, if you want to show people what you do, promote yourself, you've got to be able to reach out to them wherever they are. They're not going to be receiving pieces of paper. They're going to want to access your innovative design on their phone, on their iPad, on their laptop. This year is the first year that there are more mobile devices connected to the internet than there are desktop devices. So all of us who are using a desktop device, think about that. Okay? I wouldn't say it's going away. Of course, it's not going away. But it's certainly not what everybody who you want to communicate with is using. So before we talk about mobile and getting your content to the mobile devices, we need to talk about cloud, right? So everybody knows everything there is about the cloud, right? Who knows what the cloud is? Most in this room probably do. I would agree with that. But for many, there's a lot of myths around the cloud. So I thought I might share with you some interesting perspectives on the cloud. And I'm going to start with all right. I thought this was amusing. Hopefully you do as well. So he's got his servers on the rocket.
What are you trying to do? Put my data center in the cloud.
Get it? Put your data center in the cloud. All right. Come on, it was funny. Yeah, somebody can start an applaud. I didn't put the video together, but you can applaud me for including it in the presentation. I'll take that. Thank you very much. So there's a storm of confusion around the cloud. So I looked at some infographics on the web to see what other people thought and whether they're as educated as you are about what the cloud is. So do you know what the cloud is? 54% said they hardly ever or never use the cloud. All right, we'll talk about today we use the cloud all the time. We just don't even know it. We don't think of it in those terms, but we're certainly using those applications. 51% believe the weather can affect cloud computing. So that means half of the people in this room, no, I would say this room's a little skewed, but yes, 51% think weather can affect cloud computing. Have you ever faked it? So I don't know how many of you who raised your hand and said you knew the cloud really know the cloud, okay? But there's no test at the end of this, so you're okay. 22% say they pretended to understand the cloud, how the cloud works. 14% have pretended when on a job interview, and I love this last one. 17% have pretended to understand it on a date. Probably this guy right here. I think this is the last one. What are the benefits? So, we talk about the benefits. What are the benefits of having data on the cloud or using the cloud. 40% said they could work from home in their birthday suit as the cloud's biggest advantage. And 35%, I might have been in that number here, like the cloud allows them to interact with people they'd rather not see in person. So I agree with you, especially in this audience. We're all familiar with the cloud. We're all, know technology. There's still miscommunications about the cloud. People are still concerned about it's not safe. It's not for enterprise use. It's more for business to consumer than it is for business to business. And that's just not true anymore. It is safe. It's great for small businesses. Enterprise use is growing really, really fast. And employers are going to use it anyway. So let's face it, it's here. Employers are going to use it. Figuring out how you're going to use the cloud in order to tell your story better and to more people. So from an enterprise perspective, a lot of companies, Salesforce.com, there's lots of applications that are in the cloud. They're safe and they're secure. And from a consumer perspective, what do enterprise think? That their employees aren't using Google Docs or Dropbox, okay, in a business environment? And of course, we're all, I think the whole world is on Facebook and certainly YouTube. These are all cloud-based applications. So it's here, it's now. Let's figure out how we can use them in our work environment and how you can use that to share and promote your ideas. All right, so I'm going to tie all of this together into talk a little bit about 3D VIA, because all of the customer examples that I showed you were all done on technology from 3D VIA. There is one misconception, I think, in that 3D VIA is more than just, not just, it's a great product, but more than 3D VIA Composer. And we are the 3D communication brand. So within Dassault Systems, we're all about 3D communication. So we're all about enabling you so that you can more effectively share your ideas so that people understand them. Here is our portfolio. First one most in the room are pretty familiar with. 3D VIA Composer helps you explain your information, put together service manuals, work instructions, marketing, ways in which you can improve your communication, because that's really important. The best designs still need to be understood by everyone throughout the product development process. The second offer is one in which I didn't talk about here. It's some really cool technology, but not highly relevant for this group. It's really targeted toward retail and brand manufacturers, and that's 3D VIA Store. So if you think of that immersive environment I showed you for the bottling equipment, for instance, with 3D VIA Store, you can create an immersive environment that's a store that helps retailers understand where their product should go, what the merchandising plan should be, without having to physically create the store and test it with consumers. That's a very expensive proposition. So with 3D VIA Store, they're able to do it virtually. They're able to, you saw some of the mashup earlier with data. They're able to bring in actual retail data and optimize their store setting. So a very powerful, powerful tool for that industry. Virtual training apps. You saw some of the virtual training technology on the oil rig and the bottling equipment. It allows people to be oriented to a facility, to perform tasks in that facility, and to be tested against those tasks to ensure that they understand what they're supposed to do. And finally, 3D VIA Cloud. So this, you need to hang on, because I'm going to have an offer for you at the end of this presentation around 3D VIA Cloud. So let's talk about 3D VIA Cloud. Today, how do you share your information? E-drawings, for instance, you probably email it to somebody, right? Or you put it on a stick and have them put it on their machine. With 3D VIA Cloud, you're now able to take e-drawings and other content and put it into a hosting environment. Okay, some of the benefits now. You don't have to worry about file size. Shoot, is it going to work on my email, right? People can access it anywhere. So through their mobile device, they can get access to it. It's safe and secure. So there's lots of advantages to putting your story, your content, in a hosted environment. So 3D Via Cloud basically has three different kinds of, I'll call them applications. One is 3D Via Share, which I just talked about, which allows you to put your data up in the cloud environment. You can secure it and give access to only select groups and decide who actually gets your content and who can get access to it. The second application is 3D Via Scenes. That's been around for a little bit. That allows you to create a scenario where people can walk through a condo, for instance, or a facility and be interactive with that environment. And then the new application, which just introduced about a week ago, is 3D Via Spotlight. So this is for professionals like yourself who want to be able to show off and promote your content in a way in which it can be easily consumed by sales and by prospects and by customers. So it's a mobile marketing app. You can drag and drop your content into this very professional format. And the content can be 2D content, it can be 3D content, and put it on an iPad and be able to show exactly what you're doing, your design, your innovation, in a very slick and mobile way. No programming required. So everyone in this room can do that ourselves. So we use that technology for 3D Via Composer. There's an application called 3D Via Composer Spotlight, and you can actually there's a link there to actually go to that application. And this is where we highlight what our customers are doing with 3D Via Composer. So you see customer examples across multiple industries. You'll see real content that was created by our customers. And it's a very slick way to kind of promote and to help us share our story. So here's a special offer for sitting through the presentation. Hopefully you got something out of it. You understand our technology a little bit more and what it can do for you. The hosted service is a monthly service. Typically it's $50 a month. Anybody interested in using that hosted service, you can give me your business card and you'll be able to have access through the end of July. So that's 6 months access, so at $50 a month, so that's $300 free. And you can also use the applications that I talked about, the marketing applications, to help you share your content in 3D. So I just want to finish up talking about how the things we talked about, being able to, in your communications, be clear and precise so that people understand it, to be engaging and interactive so that people remember it, to be immersive so people can recall what you told them, and also to think about how you're going to reach your audience through wherever they are through some of the 3D Via technology around cloud and mobility. And that's my presentation. Thank you.